English is perhaps being more of an Indian language today than it was before independence. We print and publish more books than they do in the United Kingdom today. From my mother's side, the family goes back even further than my father's as far as...
But they were of pure British descent?
No, I wouldn't. From my mother's side, I would say Anglo-Indian.
So it was a mix, in the sense of a mixed heritage?
Definitely was.
Okay.
And father's side, probably British, because his father came out as a soldier.
Yes.
In the 1890s. And he did marry in India. Again, he might well have married an Anglo-Indian girl. It was somebody he met in Jabalpur, and he married there. But don't know much about her. Father was born in India. So, I mean, both my parents were born in India. All of my 4 grandparents, including grandmothers, 3 were born in India. Only one was born in England. And on my mother's side, they go back. Her father was born in a place called Dera Ismail Khan, which is now in Pakistan.
Right.
And he worked in the office of Mr. Durand, who created the border, who drew up the border between India and Afghanistan, which has caused so many problems over the years.
Some people consider English to be an Indian language as well, and others are sort of opposed to this way of thinking. When I spoke to Shashi Tharoor, he said that English has been on Indian soil since around the year 1600, and it was the language of Indian nationalism, and it's a language that knits this country together. So I'd like to know what your take is on this.
Well, of course, what he says is true, but I also think of English as perhaps being more of an Indian language today than it was before independence. It's a language that we have, in a way, what's the Hindi word, kabza karod, or taken from the British and made our own. Because today, just look at the hundreds of thousands of schools which teach through English, and the hundreds of writers that we have working in English, and they weren't there before independence. We just had half a dozen writers like R.K. Narayan and Mulk Rajanand, who wrote in English, and they had to publish in England because we didn't have publishers here.
Yeah.
And now all our writers, or at least the majority of them, actually publish in India, and they're read in India. When I wrote my first book published in 1956, it only sold a few hundred copies. But that same novel, The Room on the Roof, is today selling in thousands, 70 years later, because there are more readers in English. So while I would say in those periods that Shashi Tharoor talks about, it was the language of, I'd say, the aristocracy, of freedom fighters like Nehru or Motilal Nehru, his father. It was the language of the law courts, and it was certainly the language that was used by, I think, those who fought for independence, because they also had to go to England in order to put their case very often. But it was, I would say, important, but it was a minority language.
Yeah.
And today it's no longer such a minority language. I think a very high percentage of the country is reasonably fluent in it. And we print and publish more books than they do in the United Kingdom today.
That's quite an extraordinary thing.